Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Final Cyber 2025. Thank you for braving the rain and coming out to see us. This evening, we're very privileged to welcome Dr. Erin Pallott from the University of Manchester. She's a science communicator. She's going to talk to us about slime science and mucus, or snot. So, thank you very much for being.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and for coming out here. So as everyone heard, my name is Erin, but officially as of a couple of months ago, it's Dr. Erin Pallott. So yes, I'm here to talk to you about the sort of subjects that I've been working on, but I really plan for this to be a sort of a whistle-stop tour of all things about mucus, which is my most beloved subject, along with some other gross things. And then I'd like to just get into it first of kind of explaining how the hell does someone get into researching mucus and parasites? What are the warning signs? So a little bit about my journey. So here are the warning signs that kind of hinted that maybe I'd end up doing something like this. I loved digging for bugs in the garden. I loved pulling worms apart, having a look at them. I tried to bring things home all the time. I really gravitated towards books on diseases, the Horrible Histories disease books, my absolute favorite when I was younger. And I really loved medical shows. The more pus, the better. And I've just never really been that easily disgusted. I really enjoyed dissection classes in biology, and I'm really grateful my mum never got calls home about my behaviour during those, especially in the delight of everyone else squealing about what I've decided doing. Yeah, so I was talking about how I was fated to end up researching disgusting things. Never been shy of any of it. So I naturally started with a bachelor's in biomedical sciences. And as my mother predicted, as soon as we got to the topics on parasites, the immune system, and anything else gross, I thought, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And so then I started my PhD in 2021, where I indeed did an exact PhD on parasites and mucus. And now that I'm finally done with that, I want to move on to something else. So my two fears in this world, public speaking and slugs. So I've decided for the rest of my life, I want to talk to people on a stage about slime. Great career choice. So let's get into exactly what do we mean by mucus. We don't really think about mucus until it's an annoyance to us, until we've got a cold, it's blocking our nose, but it's extremely important for our health. So what mucus exactly is, it's a really important immune defense. And any definition you look up of mucus, it can't get away from terms like slime. So it's a slimy hydrogel, and by hydrogel, it's a gel, and it's mostly water, 95% water. But the rest of it is made up, or most of it is made up of these long glycoproteins, again, a term that doesn't really matter. So these are called mucins. They're just really long proteins. They look kind of like a pipe cleaner. So you've got this long protein backbone, and they're decorated with all these weird sugar groups. None of that's important for today, thankfully. Biochemistry was not my strong suit. And so, where is it? It's pretty much everywhere. Does anyone know where we find mucus in our body? Feel free to shout it out. Nose. Lungs. Yeah, esophagus, throat. Yes, all over that. Yes, it is in the eyes as well. Not in the brain. It needs some of that. It needs some of that. Yes, the stomach as well. So mucus, it is on our mucosal surfaces. You can guess why it's probably named that. And I describe that as basically everywhere in your body, not covered by a normal layer of skin, that comes into contact with outside things. So obviously all through your gastrointestinal tract, it's coming into contact with whatever you swallow. Your lungs are coming into contact with air. Your eyes are currently being pelted by dust and pollutants. So it's all over the place. And in different parts of the body, they produce different types of these mucins. Again, not important for today, but it's good to know. There's multiple different mucin genes which contribute to making slightly different mucus throughout the body. And then when is mucus produced? All the time, constantly. Your body uses a whole lot of energy to produce mucus constantly, not just when you're unwell. And there's not much humor about mucus online, but that's something I did find. Your body turns a lot of your water into mucus. It's constantly producing all of these mucins, and then it just turns into a gel. And in fact, so much. Here is a physical representation of about how much an adult will make in their mucus every day. So about anywhere between 1 litre to 2 litres. And if you're a big fan of the bigger picture, if everyone did a lot of spitting and harvesting of mucus today, we could fill up 20 Olympic swimming pools just in the UK every day. So there's a lot of it. And so sort of like, how are we making all this mucus? So the mucins are made by these really specialist type of cells called goblet cells. You'll see where the name comes from very soon. And these are the main cell type that produce everything you need to keep yourself nice and slimy. Let's try and find them. So here we've got some diagram of the gut. I think there's a picture of yours. So we get this whole, so this is the whole intestine here, and then the next one we've got we take a strip of either the small or the large intestine, and then if you cut that down the side and look down it, you will see this wavy structure that lines the inside, and this is called your epithelium. It's a single layer of cells. And then let's look at that. Let's turn it on its side and look closer. So then, in your epithelium, you've got this wavy structure. So you've got these dips and rises, and that is coated by your epithelium. There's way more crap underneath it. Again, not important for today. And the most important cell within the epithelium is the goblet cell. So these are the cells that are going to produce, so it's called MUC2 in the intestine. That is just one of the mucins we produce. And all throughout the epithelium, embedded among other types of cells, it's going to produce all of the mucus. And then that gets pushed into the lumen and interacts with water to make the gel. And then, of course, the most important question, why? Why are we so slimy? Why is everything so slimy? Let's go back to the very beginning. Let's find out where on earth mucus came from. It is not a new concept. It's been around for a very long time. So I hope you'll all indulge me in a quick little game of trying to figure out what order all of these came in during evolution. And if you like to keep things visualized, got some cards you can hand out if you like to have a look at what you're doing. Oh, I stretch that out. Yes. Now. No, I think most people have come to a consensus. All right. So I think the answer is just going to come up all in one. Bang! So first of all, I hope you've all put bacteria. Single-celled organism. Yeah, absolutely. And then next, got sponges, so 800 million years ago. And then comes mucus, 600 million years ago. And then we get grasses, sharks, insects or trees. I would accept either way because some insects came before trees, some trees came before some insects. And of course, last should be dinosaurs. I hope you all got that. But I did hear someone mention slime molds at the back. There is some, yeah, I was glad you mentioned. Thank you for reminding me. So although we trace mucus back to about 600 million years ago, there is some evidence of very early slime molds leaving slime trails, and those are some of the oldest fossils we have as evidence of animals moving. Whether it's the same mucus we're talking about, who knows? I take it though, I'll take it. So therefore we can say mucus is 2 billion years old. Okay, so now that we know that mucus is super old, let's have a look at the first guys to make it. So we think mucus started to be produced in corals and these little animals called comb jellies. Probably corals back then didn't look nearly as complex and beautiful as that. So we think corals started to make mucus as sort of a trap for food. Obviously, these can't move very far. So by having a sort of layer of slime, they can capture things as they drift past in the ocean. A great technique. And these comb jellies, they started evolving and producing mucus as a way of having a selective barrier. So once life started getting multiple cells, so after we started getting a bit more complex from bacteria, when you've got multiple cells, you're suddenly under threat from pathogens or anything that might try and infect you. So absolutely genius. The comb jelly started producing a slime layer that decides what comes in and what gets left out. An absolutely genius adaptation, and it's what allowed us to, it was absolutely essential to begin evolving more complex inside systems. So thank you to mucus for letting us to evolve into complex slime bags with a great big hole down the middle so we can eat whatever we want. So yeah, these adaptations were absolutely brilliant. And all roads seem to lead to slime. There is no single one common ancestor for all mucus genes. It's evolved in mammals 15 separate times. So throughout evolution, things just keep getting recruited into becoming a mucus gene and helping us make even more gel. So now we're here, much more complex. We've got so many surfaces that need protecting. What exactly do we use it for? So for example, in the intestines, we've got this beautiful mucus layer all throughout. So it keeps everything kind of slick and moving through. It's a great lubricant. Like in the comb jellies, it forms a great selective barrier. We need to get food in, but we need to keep anything that might hurt us out. And really importantly, it is the actual home for our microbiota. The microbiota is not sitting on the epithelium, it's not on our tissues, it is kept at a very friendly arm's length from the tissues, and it actually feeds the microbiota. Different species actually feed on the mucus. And then in the lungs, again, mucus is a really great lubricant. Water alone is not a great lubricant. So it stops things sticking together as we start breathing in and out, and the lungs inflate and collapse. And in the lung, mucus is also nice and sticky, so it lets you trap anything, so pollen, microbes, anything that might hurt us. And then we've got these nice brushes on the epithelium that sweep it all up, so we can cough it up, swallow it, spit it, I don't know, however you prefer. And then also we've got mucus in the, we didn't mention this one earlier, in the cervix. So this is also a really great barrier. It blocks microbes, but it also changes during fertility, whether it allows sperm to enter or when it can't. If anyone wants to do the little, little hand gesture with me, they describe it as sort of like the egg white mucus when you are fertile, when you are able to get pregnant. And then there's many more in the stomach. Mucus forms a really durable layer. We don't want our own acids digesting us. Mucus is good enough to kind of stop that from getting through. In the eye, again, water alone is not a great lubricant. It kind of helps all the tears and the moisture stick to our eyes so we don't get dry patches. In the mouth, in the saliva, again, it helps lubricate your food, stop you stabbing yourself when you're eating a whole bag of Doritos. So yeah, generally it keeps everything moist, slimy, and functioning smoothly. while also being really good at deciding what comes in, what goes out. So we've actually known mucus is really important for a really long time, just not necessarily always in the correct ways. So mucus is part of the old system that we refer to as humorism. I don't know if anyone can tell me what the 4 humors are, if they remember, so it's about fluids. So it's the 4 fluids of humorism. Oh, blood, yes. Black bile, blood, no. Yellow bile. That is our 4, yes, and phlegm. So I mean, here we have a medical system that prioritizes phlegm or mucus. So yeah, so everything in humorism was kind of, it depended what the balance was of these 4 fluids in your body. Humorism as a medical system is kind of credited to Hippocrates back in 400 BC. It's been around way longer than that. I think it's traced back to ancient Egypt, but he was the first person largely to say, hey, let's make a medical system out of this. So before we ever accepted that germs were a thing, we thought that when these fluids came out of balance, that's how you get disease. But it also tied into a lot of things like astrology. So maybe the position of Saturn doesn't quite affect our health. But the amount of mucus you have definitely does. So I can appreciate, even though if it was wrong, a system that prioritizes how important mucus is. So I don't hate it that much, maybe compared to other medics. So let's look actually at more modern medicine now that we understand. So how much mucus you have, how your mucus layers are doing is really important for your health. So an example here is inflammatory bowel disease. This affects about 5 million people worldwide, and it is a growing problem. More people are being diagnosed every year. It's a lifelong inflammation, and the current managements we have, either we have a debilitating surgery to cut the affected part of the gut out, or it's very experimental treatments that often do more harm than good. And so what generally happens here, we don't know exactly how it starts, but the result is your mucus layer kind of becomes disrupted, it starts degrading. And I mentioned that the microbiota are kept at a friendly arm's distance. That relationship starts to break down. Your own microbiota start to touch your tissues. They freak out. Oh my God, there's a bacteria here. It's been here all my life, but now it's actually touching me. I don't want to know it. And that causes lifelong disease. And again, we don't really know how does this mucus barrier start breaking down, and so that's something that we really need to research. Another disease that affects bodily mucus is cystic fibrosis. So over 100,000 people are affected globally by this, and it's caused by a gene mutation. So this one's different. It's largely a genetic disease. There is no cure, and basically what happens is your mucus in the lungs, the intestine too, but the main danger is in the lungs when the mucus becomes excessively sticky. So it can trap microbes, but then it can't be cleared. It's stuck. And what you get in these really delightful pictures is you get these sort of mucus plugs. So on the left, you've got sort of these really sticky ones that have been extracted or coughed up, but they can get really blocked. And you can see the one on the right, it's starting to take the shape of the airway that it's been extracted from. So we have come a long way. So people with cystic fibrosis, if they have latest treatment, their life expectancy is about 50 years. Without treatment, we only expect people to live about 2 years, as the main cause of death is when people get infected with things getting stuck in the lungs. And here's one that one of my colleagues work on. So this one's called pseudomyxoma peritonei, or PMP is totally fine as well. So this is a rare form of cancer, thankfully rare. And it's a mucinous carcinoma. And what this means, basically, there's a cancer in the lining of the appendix. It ruptures, and with nowhere else to go, these cancerous tissues containing goblet cells end up in the peritoneum, in the abdomen. And there, they just keep producing mucus. This disease is also sometimes called jelly belly. And because it just keeps going, eventually you get this really extreme buildup. And in one case study, I believe 10 liters was removed directly from someone's stomach. And again, there is no cure, and we don't really know how it starts. I did think this photo was a bit too much for a Monday. Who are we kidding? We're here to embrace the growth. So if you don't want to see it, look away now. There is a photo of this bloody mucus being extracted from the abdomen. Very disgusting, and basically all we can do is just bring the patient in, extract the mucus, send them on their way, but every time there's more cancerous tissue, it just builds up, it gets faster. Yeah, so there's a lot of diseases out there, and they're really complex as well. So each of those diseases I mentioned, so one's cancerous, one's genetic, and one, it's a huge combination of things. So we have missing basic knowledge on what causes the disease. So how could we treat it when we don't even understand what's going wrong with these mucus layers, and treatments are really lacking? So mucus diseases are a really major part of mucus research. But there's so much more to research about mucus as well. So I'm very delighted to introduce you to the mascot of mucus, the hagfish. So these are also called slime eels. Even though they predate eels, these evolved about 400 million years ago, and they're called the slime eel because they have this incredible ability to shed out loads of mucus in one go. And you'll see in this video, it starts to get a little cloudy, but when he brings his hands out, your slime eel has just produced all of this. It's incredibly tough. It's an amazing material, and it's also a really good defense. These guys, obviously, mucus is really good for trapping pathogens. The hagfish is ready to use it against much larger things to stop predators. Let him drop his slime in his slime jar. I've got one of those. And so here it is in action. So if you are an animal, such as a shark, and you require to filter water to survive, if suddenly you become encased in jelly, you're going to have a really rough time. So this is a video, there's not many videos of this happening. They're quite elusive creatures. But here we've got a shark, and it's going to have a go at this hagfish. And he's going to decide, actually, no, thank you. So as soon as the hagfish felt threatened, it released all of its mucus at once, a really incredible feat. And I mean, firstly, the shark could just kind of choke on it, I guess. I don't sharks choke, who knows? But yeah, so it's not pleasant at all, and they'd much rather leave the hagfish alone. And the hagfish, how does it not get stuck itself? It's really good at tying knots, so it can kind of so it produces its mucus, it kind of ties itself in a knot and kind of scrapes it off itself and then goes on its way. Really amazing creatures. So there's like multiple reasons that we actually want to research hagfish. So first one, they're really cool animals. Things like eels and hagfish, they're really elusive, but it took a long time to understand how do they breed. Seriously, look up the history of trying to figure out how eels breed. It's amazing content, although we're talking about hagfish specifically. But they can't be bred in captivity. I believe to this date we've still never done it, which is sad for hagfish researchers. They have to go and get them every time. And they're very elusive. They live in the deep ocean. They're really old, and they're still here. So people just have an interest in them because they're a weird animal. But also another major thing hagfish is being researched for is material science. So their mucus is slightly different to ours. So it does contain mucin proteins, but it also contains these extra fibers, which just make it a really strong and durable material. Like you saw in that video, that guy, he's just like putty. It's just really strong. And so we're really interested in what we can do with it. So materials like nylon, Kevlar, and lycra. So these require fossil fuels to make. And you might have heard maybe a while ago, they're trying to use like spider silk to make sort of a biological fiber. People are also interested in using hagfish fibers to make a new material that's actually sort of biological rather than burning a load of coal. I think it's still very much in progress. I think the current materials that they've managed to make from it are about as strong as spider silk, but the researchers looking into it have a lot of hope that eventually it could become a really strong material that could rival lightweight bulletproof vests currently. That's their hope. I've not dug into it, but I hope it works. I really do. Let's get on to maybe the secondary mascot of mucus. snails. So snails are also incredibly slimy creatures and probably more familiar to you that come in your house. I don't like them. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just because they come in your house and if everything else slimy doesn't, stays in the lab where it belongs. So snails have this really incredible mucus layer all around them. And it just gives them sort of the amazing properties. There's this famous video of it gliding across a razor blade, completely unharmed, unbothered. And that's thanks to its mucus layer. So snail mucus or snail mucin has been cropping up in a certain industry lately. I don't know if anyone has seen it on shelves in any particular shops. Ooh, skincare. So this is me searching in Boots. There's currently a few snail mucin products on the market, and they're really taking off in some places. Don't ask me about anything to do with cosmetics. If I know they work, I have no idea. But we are also researching snail mucus for other properties, and it does include kind of skincare. So anecdotally, farmers, I believe it was in South America, probably Chile, that were farming edible snails. They noticed that their cuts and scrapes were healing faster. And so researchers wanted to know if there's any validity to this. Are they just feeling nice and smooth, or is there actually something real to this? And there does seem to be some slight effects of snail mucin in helping wound healing, but we're still very much kind of getting into that. But in ancient medicine, snail slime was used to help heal cuts, so maybe they were onto something. And in ancient Greece and Rome, crushed up snails were used for all sorts of ailments. Anytime you felt sick, crush up a snail, eat it. But actually in the lab, we found that things in snail mucus might actually be really good against preventing bacterial growth. So maybe it was working back then. I mean, we always think of these treatments not doing anything. Maybe it was. So there's a bunch of researchers looking at snail mucus hoping to find a new antibiotic, as research into new antibiotics is very stagnant right now. We've not had a new one in quite a while. And here's one I'm very excited about, the current mucus research. Contraception. Ladies, is anyone a major fan of hormonal contraceptives? No. No one is. We're not interested in that at all. So we mentioned earlier that mucus is on the cervix and it can help determine when sperm can get in or when it can't. So researchers are actually looking at a gel contraceptive that can interact with the mucus layer on the cervix. And it can build up the mucus layer over, they think it can work in seconds. And then that's a hormone-free contraceptive that works entirely through interacting with your mucus, which again will just gradually get washed away. And it's non-hormonal, which is the best part. There's so much more we could go into, but it's really important that I start getting into my favorites. But there's a few people that I know that are working on mucus for drug delivery. So we talked about in the intestine, it's really good for deciding what can come in and what stays out. Well, a major issue in medicine is that drugs sometimes don't go in. So by using mucus coatings of drugs, it might actually help it get absorbed into the intestines. And then also, we talked about mucus is really good at lubricating things, keeping things slick. So when we're using things like contact lenses, respiratory tubes during surgeries, we could coat it with some sort of made mucus and then people will get less injured, which is really great. So there's one thing I've not talked about yet, and mucus is really important to help with it, and that is infectious disease, my favorite. Mucus is incredible at dealing with infectious disease. It's one of our best defenses against actively doing something about whatever's infecting. So I can forgive you all for thinking this, as I've not clarified it yet, but I can't forgive researchers thinking this, thinking that mucus is just sat there doing nothing, just waiting to be swept away. Not the case. Mucus is actually incredibly responsive, and all throughout your body, it is responding and changing to different cues. It can respond to your immune system, so if you've got sickness going on, it'll do something. The goblet cells making the mucus will do something. Your diet affects it, what medications you're taking. whether the microbiota has been changing, either through antibiotics or any other means. Stresses and toxins, that can change your mucus layer. Exercise, if you've done strenuous exercise lately, that can affect it. Or even just, it changes through the day. So your circadian rhythm, your 24-hour clock, your mucus layer, it looks different every time. So my research, I wanted to understand how are goblet cells responding to all of this to make changes to the mucus layer? And to do that, I wanted to look at infectious disease. So mucus is really great against infection. So we've got 4 main groups of infectious disease. We have bacteria, viruses, and yeast. Someone please tell me what the 4th one is? Parasites, I get very excited about. I absolutely love parasites. So these are kind of the pathogens that don't belong in these other groups. So to define a parasite for you, so this is something that infects a host of another species, and it needs this host to complete its life cycle. That's your broad definition of a parasite. And it includes 3 main types. Or is it quiz time first? 3 main types. So there's 3 groups of parasites generally. Some things can kind of get lumped in. So we have the protozoa. Again, scary word. These are basically single cells that aren't bacteria. They are eukaryotes, which means they're in the same kingdom as we are, same kingdom as plants and fungi. So kind of like they're not quite animals, but they're in the same kingdom as us. They are our brethren. So protozoa, they're just single-celled parasites, and they don't fit into the other classes. Next are the helminths. I've got some of those to show you later. So these are the worms. Helminths, they are a majorly abundant animal. The main type of worm, nematodes, not all of them are parasitic, but they are the most abundant animal on Earth, way more than insects. I think there's a famous quote saying, if you were to take away everything from this Earth except nematodes, you'd still see the outline of everything with all the worms left behind, which I think is fantastic. I'd love to see it. But some of them are parasitic, and these kind of make up the helminths. So not like earthworms, completely separate. They just go in your gut. And then there's another class, the ectoparasites, not my expertise at all. So these are parasitic wasps or fleas or things like that. Don't ask me about those, I know nothing about them. Some people really live for parasitic wasps. There's so many species of them. Basically, being a parasite is a really great way to live. It's evolved so many times. You get to live off something for free, and eventually you can become lazier. You don't have to produce so much stuff because you can just take it from someone else. So now we've got a little quiz. Now that I've educated you on what a parasite is, we've got a little quiz. Maybe we'll do like a thumbs up, thumbs down. So I'm going to show you some diseases or things, and I want you to tell me whether it's a parasitic disease or not. So you can also feel free to shout out, so obviously bacteria, virus, fungi, or parasites. Let's start off with something hopefully easy. COVID-19, parasite or not? Yeah, COVID-19, it's a virus. Next one, Ebola, parasite or not? It is also a virus. I think easily confused. Ebola's got kind of like that twirly structure. Viruses come in very surprising shapes and sizes, but if you ever see a picture of it in the headlines, I would definitely think it was a bacteria just from looking at it. Malaria. It is a parasite. It is one of the protozoa, so this is a single-celled parasite, and that's what causes malaria, the deadliest parasite we have currently on Earth. A lot of parasites, they generally aim to just live off you and not kill you. Malaria seems to have forgotten about that, and it's a very deadly disease, and it's still killing a lot of people. Tuberculosis, parasite or not? Yeah, that one is a bacteria. What's that, sorry? Yeah, tuberculosis is another great disease. I mean, I'll try not to get into all of them, but tuberculosis, I believe it's something like 5% of the world at least carry it. And then might even be more than that, I'm not sure. I did a talk on it when I was like 18, but I can't remember anymore. Ringworm. Is it a parasite or is it not?
No.
It is not a parasite. Despite it's a fungus. Despite its name, it is not actually a worm, and it's not a parasitic disease at all. So yeah, it's actually a fungal infection. It makes those little like ring shapes, and I guess we call it a worm because it kind of like causes like raised skin, which I guess kind of looks like something's burrowed under there, but not actually a parasitic disease. So you can take that one home. If anyone's heard of this one, the toxoplasmosis, it's also known as sort of the cat lover's disease. Yeah, that one is a parasite. You'll see a lot of sensationalist headlines about everyone who. So a cat is the primary host for Toxoplasma, another protozoan parasite. Don't believe all the headlines. If you are hygienic, you wash your hands, you don't rub cat feces all over your face, you're probably fine. You're probably all right. The main risk you get it from is eating rare meat. And even then, you'll probably be fine. Most people have it. Get him out. Unfortunately, we've got cat lovers up here, so I would gladly risk. Oh, mine's personally an angel, thank you. Mine would never do anything wrong. Okay, so this one, you might not have heard the disease name, but it's the largest cause of travelers' diarrhea. It's called giardiasis. Parasite or not parasite? It is a parasite. So if you ever gone traveling somewhere exotic, you come home and you're throwing up both ends. It could be giardiasis. Usually clears up on its own, but you can seek a GP if you're worried. Head lice. So I've thrown in a couple of like ectos for you, even though it's not my thing. I naturally scratched my head then. Head lice. Are we counting this as a parasite or not? Ooh. Think back to our definition. Head lice does count as a parasite, even though I don't care about ectoparasites. It do. So it's something that requires a host to complete its life cycle. If head lice get chucked into the sink, they don't continue, they die. Last one, a mosquito. Is it a parasite or is it not?
Yeah. Parasite. What's this? Just eat.
That's it. Yeah, so a mosquito is not technically a parasite. It feeds on us. It's a bloodsucker, but then it goes on about its life. And obviously, malaria is the parasite it often transmits, but the mosquito itself, not a parasite. So when you get to like insects, there is quite a fine line. That's why I prefer to stick to my insidey parasite. Much clearer. So now, that was really great. Thank you. So now we get on to my favorite parasite, the one that I dedicated 4 years to. And this guy is called Trichuris. There he is. So this is, its colloquial name is the whipworm. So this is, it's part of the nematode family. It's a round worm. It's not that big in real life. It's only about that. I've got some to show you later. So this, I mean, as much as love I have for it, I mainly look at it in the lab. It's how people get infected with it. So it's just from swallowing the eggs. So these parasites, they lay a lot of eggs. Those get shed in your feces, and then people end up swallowing them again. So it's called a soil transmitted helminth. So this group of helminths, there's 4 species, and together they still infect about 24% of the world. Currently, still. So Trichuris has, there's lots of them. There's a specific one for each mammal, basically. I use the mouse one. So I'm at no risk for it. Yeah, Trichuris is kind of special in that each mammal kind of has its own one to infect it. Not all mammals, but we've identified quite a few. So this one specifically infects 400 million people worldwide. And as I mentioned, it's because people keep swallowing the eggs, the life cycle continues. So there are drugs for this, but it doesn't stop someone getting infected again. So across Africa, Asia, South America, they're not necessarily totally eradicated in Europe and North America, just much rarer because we have the extreme privilege of clean water and washed food. And so we do have medications for this, but again, it doesn't stop. We've never been able to make a vaccine for these either. So like think about this, this is a whole animal. It's not a bacteria or a virus, that is an animal, and creating a vaccine against an animal is pretty challenging. What the hell do you target without hurting yourself? So when people get infected with this, it's usually a chronic infection. They can be lifelong. So people generally just carry low worm burdens like throughout their life. They take medication, they'll catch it again. But in the lab, something interesting can happen. So most people don't manage to expel their parasites. But when I look at mice in the lab, some mice can kick out all their parasites and some can't. So my research was looking into what is the difference between this. And so to look at that, I wanted to look at the goblet cells. So what is the difference between a goblet cell in a mouse that can get rid of all the parasites, and what is the difference in a mouse that can't? So we're going back to our diagram of the intestinal epithelium. I'm only talking about the intestine from here on out because that's the only thing I looked at. So we've got this wavy intestinal layer, the epithelium, that's got its goblet cells embedded. Now we get to have a look at what that looks like in real life. This is one of my very own images. Looks a lot less clean than the diagram. So what we're looking at here, same orientation. So you've got your tissue in the middle. On the top, that's just crap in the gut. Don't worry about that. But you've got this tissue, and you can see slightly sort of the dips. And what's in blue is the goblet cell. So biological tissue, it doesn't have a color. We have to give it a color. So this is me taking a section of mouse gut, throwing some really harsh chemicals on it, and the result is the goblet cells look blue, all the mucin is blue, and the rest is sort of this purpley color. So then we can have a look, we can compare this. So what happens during infection? So this is a naive mouse, which is just a technical term for means I haven't infected it yet. So when we give trichuris in the lab, we feed the mouse some eggs. It's not pleasant, but thankfully trichuris is quite a common parasite. I think 98% of wild mice have this parasite. It doesn't really hurt them much, so that helps my conscience. So we give them this parasite, and then we can look at what happens after infection. So this is the same tissue of a mouse that can't kick out its worms. And there's actually a worm there, which I'll highlight for you in a second. So in the uninfected mouse, you've got about 8 to 10 of these blue goblet cells per crypt. So each crypt is each time the coming down, the dip, each dip is called an intestinal crypt. And in the mouse that can't get rid of its worms, there's still only 8 to 10 goblet cells per crypt. But as you can see, the tissue's really messed up. It's really long. It's hard to tell which way up anything is. It's just a mess of purple. This one's that's actually, so that's like a worm that's been kind of sliced as I'm cutting the section. So everything gets kind of messed up. But here is a mouse that can get rid of its worms. And you can now immediately see, strikingly, an absolute sea of blue. So these mice switch up how many goblet cells there are. So this is taken 3 weeks after infection. And so now they have about 20 goblet cells per dip, per crypt. And you can see in that sort of like the blue on top of the epithelium, that's all sort of extra mucus that's being made. Usually in this process, all the mucus gets degraded, but clearly there's so much, some of it's surviving, which is a really incredible process. So your gut really changes what sort of cell types it is in response to infection. And clearly this is a real important mechanism to actually kick these worms out. So you're going to need a hell of a lot of mucus to kick these animals out of your own gut. And I looked a lot at this, so obviously more mucus is great, but there's more. There's a lot more to it than that. I'll try and keep it very brief. Don't ask a PhD student to summarize their work briefly. So the intestine is absolutely incredible. Yes?
So the type that was able to clear it first is not. Is that because you created genotype wise?
Strains, yeah. So there's lots of different things that can affect whether it can kick the worms out or not. Mouse strain which is kind of like a breed of mouse that affects it. Some of it's sex dependent. Female mice are generally better at getting rid of worms. It depends on their diet. It depends on a lot of things. So for this, I used a specific strain of mouse where it depends how many eggs you give them. So the worm that can't kick it out, I gave them a low dose of eggs, which kind of represents a natural infection. People are not swallowing a whole vial of parasite eggs, they're slowly building them up over time. Whereas this mouse on the bottom that could expel its worms gave lots at once, which clearly does something to help trigger all of this mucus production.
Just carry on, sorry.
Yeah.
So that giant bite you've got.
Yeah.
Are they yeah.
I could give an overview of it at the end if it helps, because you've asked the immune system question.
Okay.
You've activated a long, arduous journey, but it's about immune signals. What immune signals get triggered, and in this case, how many eggs you get kind of determines what immune signals get produced, and that determines whether more goblet cells can be made or whether the tissue ends up looking like that. It's just different immune signals driving it, but I can try and give a cleaner overview of that at the end.
Is there something that humans can then do to then from this thing? Tell me again.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no, we're nearly at the end anyway. So I just wanted to show you something else as well from my very cool data, lots of images. Just how quick the gut can change and respond to things like infection. So here's our diagram again, but I've added something else. So at the bottom of each crypt, we've got these stem cells. So these are the cells that divide, and they make all of the cells that you see running up the crypt. So I've added those arrows. So as they divide, all the cells kind of move up, and once they reach the top, they get flicked off into the lumen, carried out with the rest of the gut contents. And that happens constantly. We call it the epithelial escalator. So it starts down there, everything moves up, and then it gets flicked off when there's not enough space anymore. Does anyone want to have a guess on how long it takes for every single cell in the epithelium to be renewed on average? You want to have a guess? A week?
5
hours. That would be incredible. Yeah, I love that. About 3 to 5 days, which for a tissue, that is incredibly fast. You kind of undercut there. I wish it was 5 hours. That would be even more impressive. No, absolutely great guess. Yeah, 3 to 5 days, your intestinal lining is completely new every time, which is when you think about some cells you have for life, some you have for less than a week. So here's the same image again that I showed you. So this is an uninfected mouse, so day 0. So I'm about to give this guy, well, not this guy because he's already dead and I've got his picture. His friends, his litter mates, I'm about to give him a parasite. So this is day 14 after the infection. Not much has changed. So 2 weeks in, there's not much change. And then by day 19, oh my God, what's going on here? Suddenly everything looks really different. The crypts are really long. There's way more goblet cells. So this is a mouse that can expel. But day 19, things almost look messed up like the mouse that couldn't expel. And then by day 21, we're back to that. So in 2 days, the length of your epithelial crypts has changed almost twofold within 2 days. And then you've got all these goblet cells just appearing out of seemingly nowhere to produce way more mucus. And when I got that data, I assumed I'd mixed all the samples up, and I went, oh, that's a chronic infection. That can't be the mouse that's about to kick out all of its worms. I did it 2 more times, and again, things just change incredibly rapidly, which I think is probably the most phenomenal part of the gut. Just because I really want to show you my fancy images, I hope you all really want to see them. So of course this has to be more than just how much mucus is being made, because it took me 4 years. And you'd be so right to think so. Goblet cells, they make mucus, that is their most vital role, but they do other things as well. They make a lot more. So here is a very fancy stain I did. So tilt your head slightly, but it's kind of the same as the others. So that in blue and green, that's just your shape of the intestine, that's just the crypts. In red, we've got our goblet cells, and then in yellow, we've got this antimicrobial protein. So this protein is good at killing off bacteria, and some of the goblet cells are making them. And it's right down at the bottom where the stem cells are. So it's keeping the stem cells clean without hurting our friendly arm's length bacteria up there. We don't want to kill them. We just want to make sure they don't quite get in here. Then during infection, everything kind of changes. So in the mouse that can get rid of its worms, you can see, so the yellow is still kind of sticking towards the bottom. There's a bit more, but it's sticking to the bottom. Things aren't so unhappy. But where the worms have stayed, oh my goodness, all the goblet cells are now switching to make antimicrobial proteins. So these are things that can kill bacteria. So if you think, so this worm, it burrows into your epithelium. It causes extreme amounts of damage, way more than a bacteria can ever do. It's leaving holes in your intestine as it kind of snakes its way through. And with that, it brings all of the bacteria with it. So antibacterial, so it's really good for sort of protecting against the damage that's going on, but it's not good for kicking the worms out. So generally, to boil this down into just sort of a couple of sentences, basically goblet cells that get rid of worms really focus towards making more mucus, and where the worms stay, the goblet cells, they're still doing a good job. It's just kind of misfocused. They're focused towards getting rid of bacteria, which keeps the mouse alive. The chronically infected mice don't die, but it's just not good enough to get rid of the worms. So my take home is that goblet cells are incredibly responsive. Your mucus is incredibly responsive, and it's just really important. And I really wanted to leave you with some advice on how to look after your mucus before we get into questions. So number one, stay hydrated. Remember the meme earlier? You're going to use it all to make mucus, so have some extra. Eat your fiber. So remember your microbiota, they partially eat your mucus in your intestine. If you don't nourish them well, they'll eat something else. So give them what they need. It's very important. Same advice. Get your sleep, it's very important. You can't regenerate things if you don't sleep. And really important advice, please avoid abusing your mucus linings. Really important. So my final thing, so thank you very much for listening. I've got a sneaky clip of, I did this science speaking competition a few months ago, so there's a video of me doing a much shorter version of this. And there's also, I'm on Instagram, I'll be starting to post more videos. But other than that, the only thing to do left is raise a glass to mucus. Cheers.
Well, luckily not. So what you do when the outer this entire mucous membrane was reacting to whatever it was that was being how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so allergy is a major sort of field of immunology. It's not something I focus on, but of course, when you have allergic reactions, you get much more snot, you get more sort of mucus being produced. So it's more about building tolerance so you're not reacting to things that can't hurt you.
I think what I was wondering is, if you're treating the allergy, are you affecting the effectiveness of the mucus?
Yeah, so it would really, so obviously if you're taking, so if you've got like pollen allergies, you use things to kind of decongest. They're not great long term, but it's better than not being able to breathe. So all things that treat your delicate tissues, it is a balance. It is going to cause some damage. So I think people that use those nasal sprays very often, it can cause sort of I forget what they call it, sort of like relapse. Basically, you start producing mucus in overdrive, and you always have a blocked nose. So use those sparingly, only when you need them. But yeah, treatments that help clear allergy can also help damage. Yep.
Question online. Can you make mucus outside of the body?
Yeah, well, obviously, so people are looking to, well, I mean, it's right here. It's definitely mucus. For people looking to like sort of synthetically make mucus, it's quite hard to work with being a gel. Obviously, it's 95% water, and then the rest is sort of a framework. Can we make exact mucins outside of the body? So these are absolutely massive proteins. Your average protein is about 300 amino acids. Up to the one I work on is 5,000. And all this coating they have, it's incredibly complex. We don't even understand why it's so variable. It's sugar coat, but it's really important. If you don't have it, you die. So it's I don't think we can make mucus directly outside the body, but people are obviously trying, particularly for material science and medicine. But as far as I know, we can't do that yet. But we can make other slimes like people are doing out of the hagfish fibers.
And for the allergy one, don't let me go back to the cats, because that's a big part of it.
Are you allergic to them?
Well, I'm not, but I know people that are, and people they give them candy. People ask me, so it's sort of it's a big thing at the immune reaction to them. I love cats, by the way. And my question is, the mice that you said about different mucus reactions and stuff like that. Did you look at the difference in microbiota in the mice to say, right, okay, because at the moment there's a lot of good bacteria and bad bacteria and all that sort of stuff. And so does the type of bacteria within the gut affect that reaction? And therefore, is that a learning that we should take on? Or do you not find that?
So I didn't specifically work on the microbiota much, but of course my examiners asked me a lot about it. So your microbiota, your immune system, and your mucus layer, they are in a very intertwined three-way relationship. If you affect one, you're going to affect the others. So having a sort of a non-optimal makeup of what bacterial species you have in your gut, which again you could decimate through antibiotics, through poor diet. That will eventually affect your mucus layer, which leads to inflammation. But your immune system can also control, to a degree, what sort of bacterial species there are, but again, largely through changing the mucus layer, which then affects the microbiome. So it's always sort of a balancing act of basically not too much inflammation, but just enough to not let things overgrow.
So I'm wondering there, if you then say, you can do fecal transfers.
Yes.
And did you try that? Get some mouse poo from one that could get the worm and put it in the other one to see what happens.
Yeah. So I don't think we've done that in looking at helminths specifically, in helminth infections, but it's definitely something we could try. We know that the increased mucus production is essential. So if you knock out the ability to do that, they can't get rid of the worms, basically, no matter what else you do. But probably having a healthy microbiota could affect it. And having certain different, so if you have no bacteria, so we have these germ-free mice, they don't have any bacteria in their guts at all. They have a very poor mucus layer. So it's definitely a two-way relationship. So if you have a bad balance of bacteria, again, it's going to tip the balance. So maybe fecal transplants of different bacterial populations could affect the health of your mucus layer. But I think so far it's quite transient. It's very hard to get them to stick. So you look back a week later and it's just kind of gone back to the way it was.
No bacteria can't be healthy. Some bacteria is good bacteria.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Love your microbiota.
But it is that cause and effect thing, is it, trying to tease that out? And are we a better product, our health product? But bad bacteria is also the wrong bacteria. Because loads of people, then you started off with IBS and things like that, and then you're looking at, well, is that actually a bacterial problem?
Yeah,
rather than a mucal problem, a genetic problem.
Inflammatory bowel disease. It's partially the microbiota, it's partially your genetics, it's partially lifestyle. It's a very complex disease. All of those things kind of have to come in together for someone to have this disease. So it's a very complex one. I think there's like dozens of genes identified that increase someone's risk. There is no one single cause, but changes in microbiota population is one of the risk factors.
So it's not the
I was just going to say, it's about we always told you.
Yeah, so this is a big part of sort of like parasitology, and allergy is sort of like the hygiene hypothesis, or also there's another version called like the old friends hypothesis. Getting a little bit dirty is good for you, because if you never touch any bacteria in your life, the first time you do experience it, you're going to be very upset. Your body's not going to know what to do with it. Because I think it's generally kids with siblings are slightly less likely to have allergies. Homes with pets, they're less likely to grow up with allergies. It's not a definite, it just helps. It does help to be a little bit gross. Wash your hands 9 out of 10 times, maybe.
Hagfish. Where is it releasing this mucus from? Is it skin? Is it
so it's got these. So it's kind of. I think it's got these kind of like pores all down its body, and I went on a conference to talk about mucins specifically, so protein biology, and there was a hagfish expert there, and I made sure I sat with him at dinner because I really wanted to learn more about this. So they have these pores all along their body, and they do produce mucus generally anyway, but if they're threatened, they kind of empty everything at once. Everything they have, they just kind of throw it out into the water.
And then how often can they do that trick?
Great question. That was one of his guest questions around the dinner table. How long do we think it would take? Apparently it's months. It takes months to refill all of that. I assume, because obviously we're making bucket loads all the time. So I guess there's something in hagfish mucus that takes longer to produce. So obviously they do have some mucus, but to do their kind of like upstream, it takes a long time to reload. And actually, I do have some worms to look at here. Let me get those out if people want to have a look. You got another one? Here, because to me they belong in a museum. Yeah, Jones reference. But you're welcome to come up and have a look while we're talking. They are completely not dangerous, but just please don't touch, because if it gets broken, I'm in trouble. So please look with your eyes. But here, so on this one, we got Trichuris. There's a whole bunch of them. This is the one I worked on. And this one, I don't know the exact species of this one or which animal it infected, but it's very much similar to one that does infect humans called the roundworm. And this one infects about 1 billion people currently. It's pretty big. It's about 30 centimeters in length. Pretty nasty when it builds up. And also it's...
Sorry, what was it doing?
It can be, yes. You probably know about it if you had it. It's pretty rare in the UK, but a lot of people worldwide still have it. And when the infection gets too heavy, you'll see photos of people who look malnourished but very bloated stomachs. It could be that infection. And when it gets that bad, it has to be removed surgically. And I have not punished you with the photo of that.
Stood on a slug through the sock, and it's slimy. So
I think that's what triggered me to really not like them, even though I'm not disgusted by anything else. I think I stood on one.
Is it? What is it that makes slimy? slimy?
That's a good question. Let's get into the physics. I'm not into, well, the fact that it's just mostly water, that's what makes it nice and moist. It's just everything else that's in it that stops it. Like water is not a good lubricant, but if you add a few more things, so it's not only mucin that's in mucus, there's a bunch of like salt ions, there's all sorts going on. I actually don't know exactly what makes it so wonderfully slippery. Slugs and snails, I'm not sure how far removed from things like hagfish they are. So they're part of the mollusks. So they're not that far removed from ocean creatures. So probably a lot more related to them than us. Maybe, I don't know. You'd be surprised what's more related to us than things that look like it.
You sometimes remove the slime in the future.
What's good at getting rid of? Yeah, don't don't step on it. Getting rid of the slime. I don't know. I suppose what do you? To get rid of oil. Yeah, probably soap. Soap is the best thing. Soap breaks down things that are like slimy. It's like good for oil, probably good for slime as well.
On the hagfish, it's all about first. Are the hagfish, are they the ones that are like the vultures of the sea? Just go and eat all the dead stuff, like inside the sharks, dead sharks?
I think hagfish, yes. I think hagfish, yeah, they do also feed on sort of like whale foal and stuff. You can find them there. But you've seen that really wonderful video of like these marine biologists and they're operating a camera and they find this dead whale on the seafloor and they go absolutely bananas and they're like, oh my God, whale foal, look at them all go. And it's like you can see things that look like hagfish kind of eating the whale. Octopi are kind of like having a feast. I believe they do sort of eat things that have fallen. I'm not sure. There's also sort of like their counterpart lampreys. They're the ones that kind of hook onto things. You might have seen them if you ever watched River Monsters. So they're kind of like hagfish, sort of like their cousins, but they have sort of like circular mouths and they just kind of stick onto things. I prefer hagfish.
So does anything actually manage to eat the hagfish or is it completely untouchable? Or maybe it's just after it shed its life and things are waiting to grab it.
Yeah, probably. Probably if a predator catches it in that moment where it's not regenerated enough mucus yet, then it probably will get it. But they've survived for a very long time. You usually assume they're doing something really right.
No shark tell the second shark.
Snake can climb over railings. This advice given to gardeners that you can put eggshells around or eggshells to protect your grass. It's the low bulb top.
Oh, is it supposed to be that because it hurts them?
No, because it's supposed to deal with the discourages and they don't like it. When you take over a razor, two coffee grounds from your precious dahlia is not going to have any of that.
Yeah, well, it would have to be something else in there that's putting them off, not the fact it's a sharp shell, because that won't bother them. But maybe there's something else in there that puts them off.
They say coffee grounds and eggshells.
Hedgehogs.
If you can get over a razor blade.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got one for you for that one, which is apparently chili powder. You can buy huge bags of it from Indian supermarkets because it does degrade, it doesn't last that long, but you scatter chili powder around. And like that's a
Taste.
yeah.
I thought that was more a mammalian thing, but maybe they can taste heat as well. I don't know.
New science. Right.
Online.
So it's also like an agony and dear Erin.
What's that?
Trouble the slug. So there's something really cut through. How do I deal with fatty things?
Fatty thing. Well, that's soap. What's so cutting
I'm
through?
sorry, like it does with fatty things.
Sorry, say that again.
How do you wash the slime when you've stood on the slug?
Keep-
You can't do it with soap.
Keep going. Well, the fact that it's like just sand and salt. But yeah, the fact that it's lubricating is what makes it difficult to get rid of. I mean, to get rid of all the snail trail that I used to have in my house, it was just persistence with a cloth. I don't know. Yeah, I know. Yes, brilliant. Squeeze through it. There must be a good answer, like chemically, what is good for cutting through slime and mucus, but unfortunately, I don't seem to know. Yeah. So how mucus gets broken down in general is through specific types of enzymes. So if you had a compatible enzyme spray, that would break down and then it would become waterier again, and then you can wipe it away, I guess. I don't know if we've got mucin spray to hand in the supermarket. Maybe. It's meant to make your skin nice and smooth. But so yeah, obviously, yeah, researchers are looking into sort of healing properties, but we're not there yet with anything sort of real to apply to humans. But some people seem to think it's really good for the skin. I mean, you can go all the way back. One of them had really good ratings. I mean, it contains other things as well, so I can't necessarily prove. This one that came up, it's when I was Googling it, the CosRx Advanced Snail 96% Mucin Power Essence. Whoa! Has a 20 quid. I don't know how much you get.
General public
It's
know what
just-
that is though, because I mean, if I told them it was snot, they would probably better put people off
Yeah,
buying it. wouldn't
I
they,
think
suppose?
it's largely relying on trends. Because
Yeah.
there has been stuff out there saying like, did you know snail mucin is the next great thing for your skin? So clearly some people aren't too put off by it. I mean, when it's that processed, I probably wouldn't care either, even though the idea of a snail on my face is kind of, but a cleanser, a facial cleanser. Yeah, but it's really, I guess, popping off in the cosmetic world. Will we see it in other cosmetics? I don't know. How the hell they like even put the mucin into cosmetics? No idea. The closest I've ever gotten to cosmetics is I did a research thing for £270 where they put sun cream on me and then took parts of my skin, so I've got these really cool scars. That's as much as I know about cosmetics, is that they'll pay you to put them on and then cut your skin off. That's all I know. £270.
Laura?
I'm not doing research anymore. No, I'm planning to move into science communication. I love doing this a lot more than lab work. As scary as it is for people watching you, lab work's just not for me. But if I was to continue, I'd definitely start with looking at the microbiota, but I'd also be looking at other areas of the intestine. So mine focused on this very small section of the mouse gut called the cecum. We do have one, it's just very, very small in humans. It's almost like not there. But I'd love to look in parts of the colon, the ileum so basically my work kind of builds a profile of what goblet cells make and when during infection. I want to know what's going on in the lungs, what's going on in other parts of the gut, because there's another really cool research. If your mucus layer changes in one position, it changes somewhere else as well. So a gut infection with worms can change your mucus in your eye, which is like another thing a colleague worked on. Absolutely crazy. So they're all kind of coordinating, talking to each other. So I'd love to look at that if I was to continue research, if they could pay me enough.
So can the body produce mucus?
Yeah, so I mean, the cystic fibrosis, I wouldn't necessarily consider it an overproduction. It's more just a wrong consistency. But obviously, so like in that cancerous, so the mucinous carcinoma. So if goblet cells become cancerous and they never die off and replenish, they can just keep going making mucus. So there's quite a lot of mucinous cancers. They're generally quite rare. But those can lead to an overproduction of mucus. Allergies lead to an overproduction of mucus. And I think there are some general conditions, especially that lead to like lots of snot being produced in the nose. As for like the lungs and the intestines, I'm not entirely sure of like specific diseases that are just characterized by producing too much mucus, but maybe there is.
So to the question earlier about synthesizing it. You can't find it.
No, so it breaks down over time. So any work to do with mucus is quite challenging. So when you take mucus out of the body, you're not just taking the mucus, you're taking everything that's been thrown into it. So when we try and characterize like what proteins are in mucus, we're also counting all of the mucus that's in those cells that are being like thrown off once they're too mature. So it's really hard to do anything with it. It breaks down, interacts with things. You can't fix mucus because it's made of 95% water, and when you fix it, the water goes to stop it doing anything. So you just be left with a microscopic pile of mucin, which is just going to fall apart anyway because there's no water.
Is the local goblet cell like nerve network? Do they talk to each other,
Ooh.
or is it all sort of brain control?
So they largely responding to. So we had that. Is there one quickly nearby? Actually, it was this way, wasn't it? Yeah, so we've got that epithelial layer, and then that sort of a yellowy color underneath, that is your lamina propria. That is full of all sorts of different cells, lots of immune cells in the gut specifically. So your goblet cells have, they're called goblet cells because of like the bulbous top looking like a goblet. Underneath is where they can kind of receive lots of signals from other cells that are underneath, and that's largely from whatever local immune signals are being produced. But those immune signals can come from lymph nodes, which could be coming from anywhere in the body. So and there is sort of a research into goblet cells being affected by the nervous system, so the gut nervous system directly. I didn't. That's another thing that I would look into if I was continuing. Yeah, so that's kind of it's to do with immune cells moving from one place to another or teaching immune cells what to become somewhere else. So it's related to these cells called ILC2s, not important. They're just like an innate immune cell and they produce a lot of chemical messengers. And if you have an infection in one location, they kind of go into overdrive at other locations. So they're kind of being taught somewhere else. It's like, hey, have you seen what's going on over there? You should go do that over there as well. I don't know how profound the changes are at other sites, but it is like a noticeable difference that you're getting more, and you're actually more ready to catch an infection at those sites. So if you've had an infection in the gut, your lung mucus is more ready to catch a worm coming through there as well, which is really cool. Thank you.
Anybody else, any questions for Erin?
I mean, feel free to come talk about parasites or mucus or come look at the worms.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Things really interesting. So it just remains for me to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and thank you also to our wonderful bar staff for serving us every month. And thank you.
Yeah, feel free to. Oh, thank you so much.
Shell then.
So a gel is just anything that's kind of watery. I mean, slime again is not a very specific. Just watch out because that one seems to be very slightly leaking ethanol. So slime and gel aren't very specific terms. So mucus specifically, we're talking about a gel that has mucin protein. But gels can be made out of all sorts of things. There's like a saliva that is not. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so I don't know what they currently use, but maybe it's quite a maybe it's not, maybe it's expensive to produce. Mucus is free. But again, we're not really ready to make mucus from scratch.